Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pocket Coach. Today's experiment is product modeling. In SAFe, they call this a solution intent. They're very similar ideas. They may not be the exact same, but I kind of map them together. So this one is a big one. I love this one. This is our advanced experiment. Let me go ahead and start the timer here. This is one of my first advanced experiments that I do with a client. Once I got the fundamentals in place, this becomes like immediately needed. In fact, just today, I coached on this twice by coincidence. So what is this problem that we're trying to solve? So we are told over and over again not to put details into stories, and yet we need details. And so every time I just looked at a story today, it had pages of information. That's not what a story is. The user, as a role, I want a goal so I can reason, or a user can, right? Whatever. So we're told not to put our details into stories, but we need a place to put them. And we need a way to stay agile with the way we do that. So the product modeling practice, solution intent, is a place to put the stuff that you'll need long-term, okay? Hypothesis, a product model or SAFe solution intent can be built that shows the current state of your solution plus one increment. And so that's the idea, is it's the current state plus an increment only. And so the first step in your development is update the solution intent with what the future looks like if we were done. And then we build that and we test that, and then we end the increment and you're back to the solution intent just being current state. You add another increment. Okay, so it's always current state plus one increment. After 3 sprints, you'll know that this is awesome, and give it 2 sprints before you pivot or persevere. The typical outcomes: if you do this, you're going to decrease the time it takes to write stories, you're going to decrease the time it takes to build a product, and you're going to decrease time it takes to test a product. All 3. So this is a really powerful experiment. All right, so what do you got to do? Skill growth. What do you got to do? You have to create a product model or a solution intent, whatever you want to call it, for your product, and have a simplified story writing experience because of it. And honestly, simplified design and testing experiences as well. Okay, so let's get into it. We're probably going to go over on this one. So let's see, 3 minutes left. So first off, about the product model, there's 2 ways to get it built. I've done both of these at clients. So the Big Bang approach, right here, my mouse has disappeared for a second. The Big Bang approach, we lock a bunch of experts in a room, and 2 weeks later we come out and you've got an incredible model. I've done that in multiple clients. Incremental, yeah, we can't be putting our experts in a room for 2 weeks or 2 days. And so it's incremental. Basically, the model starts with empty, and then we add 1 increment to 0, right? You add 1 increment, and so at the end of that becomes everything you have in your model. It's very thin. It's missing 99% of the reality of today. Doesn't matter. Next sprint, we add another increment. Next sprint, we add another increment, and we keep adding an increment every sprint, and little by little, your model grows. So whether you do a Big Bang or whether you do incremental, they're both really great ways to go, and they're effective. I do want to point out, I put this picture here of parsimony. This comes from Wikipedia. Wikipedia. I love this. So parsimony is about modeling, right? And it's saying that that excessive elaboration is a bad idea, right? And yet we see that a lot in design models. The model does not need to be perfect. It just needs to be directionally correct so that we can get there faster. Once people realize that the model will never be perfect, every model is always a simplification. So let's figure out what the bare minimum is that will allow us to get there. So it says seek an economical description. In other words, that one that we can update quickly, right? Simple but evocative, right? Over elaboration and over parameterization often is the mark of mediocrity. I love that statement. So the more you over parameterize, the more you over elaborate, the more mediocre your model is. Worry selectively. Every model is wrong. You're guaranteed it's wrong because it's just a model. The question is it importantly wrong? So people who worry about the wrong things and focus on the wrong things, they don't get the parsimony idea. So I thought that was really cool. I have a little workshop agenda here that I use to create the model if it's for the first time, and then the strategy to maintain it, right? So again, here's the gather the expert together for a Kaizen event, or just build it in increments. But it starts with identifying the product we want to do the model for. And also note that there is a design model and a test model, as well as a behavior model. So the behavior model can be described in features and stories of the current system, but you can also have a design model and a test model in your solution model. And each of these has a very different look and feel. Last thing I'm going to show you in my first 5 minutes is a template. So I have here a template. We have the behavior model, the design model, and the test model in the template. And so you can see the behavior model has these things here. This is what I'm going to go deep in the second 5 minutes. So in the second 5 minutes, I'm going to show you how the behavior model might look for real. The design model and test model, I'm going to leave those to a different video, a design model video and a test model video that we can look at, because those audiences are pretty different. But everybody needs to know about the behavior model. So there you have it. That, my friends, is the first 5 minutes of the product modeling practice, the product modeling experiment. So if you want to stick around another 5 minutes, I will show you what the behavior model within the product model might look like. All right. So I'm resetting my timer. Second 5 minutes starts now. So whenever I help someone write a new product model, I always use Amazon as a teaching example because I feel like everyone gets Amazon. So it's a really great model to use. And I have people think through what the answer would be for Amazon and then say, okay, now let's do your model. So they do it twice. I don't show them the Amazon one. Here I'm about to show you the Amazon one, but I actually have them think it up on their own and then say, okay, now that you exercise that muscle, let's go on to it for your solution. So if we look at this template, the first thing we have is a product context, right? So the product context basically says, where does your product live? In what context does it live? So thought experiment. If you're going to do the context model for an airplane, what would the context, in what context does an airplane exist? Pause the video, think about it, unpause, and then I'll tell you what I think the answer is. Okay, hopefully you paused. An airplane's context could be the airport. What is the airplane like at the airport? The context could be the sky, flying, right? The context could be a crash site, right? Where the plane has crashed and we have to find out how and why, right? So lots of different contexts. And another one would be from the context of a flight attendant or the context of a pilot. So in that case, it's the users of it. So the context can be how it's used or where it's used, okay? So going for Amazon, for context, we focused really on the users in this case, but think about this. If you think about the different contexts, like for example, a crash site, you would find different users. If you think about the context of at the airport, at the gate, you find different users. In flight, you find different users. So the context will help you identify users. Okay, looking here, for Amazon, we said, okay, Prime member, buyer, seller, admin, and customer support. Those were the 5. Are there others? Sure. And you can add to this. That's what's great about these models is that this is current state. It's not requirements for the future, which is why people are like, this is a requirements document. No, because it already exists. This is current state. And all we do is add one increment to it. So let's say that we never had Prime members. We would say, okay, in this increment, we're going to create something called Prime members. And so this might be in a different color, like red or green or something. So these are all blue. These is red. This shows you current state versus the new increment. Always use some kind of a way to show what's current state and what's in the new increment. In this case, this is 100% current state. No new increment being shown here. The next thing is for each user, you ask, what do they do? What are the major features of our solution that they need, that they want, that they desire, the major features? So in this case, we went with buyer. And we said for the buyer, their major features are the ability to buy books, to buy other products, to create wish lists, to create an account, etc. You can read these. For Prime members, you can see there was 3 additional features. For sellers, there's a feature. For admin, there's a feature. And for customer support, we have features. So these are features of Amazon from the perspective of the different users. It starts with, what is your product? Next, in what context does that product get used? From the context, what users exist in those different contexts, and that will allow you to come up with a really robust model. Okay. Now, what if you don't have the luxury of a few days to build one of these? That's okay. For the next increment, what do you need to know? And so you will only document as much as you need for the current increment. But when you do document that current increment, you're going to document the current state stuff that will change and then what the change is. So it'll be a little bit of both, but mostly it'll be the new stuff and a little bit of the old stuff. And then each increment, you'll see that your old stuff model continues to evolve. But me, I like doing the big bang at least one time at the very, very beginning, even if it's just for a day. But I have done 2-week ones. It's very intense. Okay, so next we have the feature value stream. Okay, so what happens next is we look at each of these features and we ask, what is it like to do this, right? What is the scenario of a buyer buying a book? So we did that one as our first example. And so they access the site according to authentication rules. They search for a product, they read details, they add it to the cart, they select checkout. They select a shipping option, etc. So you can read through these steps, but notice two different syntax options here. The three, actually. The letter A indicates there's other things that might happen here, and you can see the alternatives down here. You'll notice italics. The italics is that there's a rule set that we want to capture, a business rule set, not a coding rule set, a business rule set. And then finally, underlined items are complex business terms that need to be defined. So we'll have business terms, business rules, as well as an overall scenario and alternates. Down here, you can see an example of a rule set. Every rule set has a name, authentication rules, and then each rule has a name and then what that rule is. Terms have a rule set as well. That's my second 5 minutes is up. So I'm going to do a third 5 and it'll be the final 5. I'm just going to walk through the rest of this and show you some of the assets we use to simplify all of this stuff. Okay, so let me reset this. Final 5 minutes. Okay, in the final 5 minutes then, terms. So the way to write terms is specified. We have a little document on how to write them, and we'll show you that in just a second. But you can see here, Amazon Prime, a subscription-based service that allows customer privileges that basic customers do not have access to. See Prime privileges for details. So you can actually link terms to terms. Here, Prime privileges, a list of special features that only Prime members can take advantage of. Valid range includes these 5 items, right? So basically then if in the future we come up with a new Prime privilege, like listening to music, right, then we could actually add another cell just right here. So notice how much this simplifies. Now for the user story, a user can listen to Prime music, and then they can listen. You can go look at the solution model for the details on that without having to put it into the story. Prime shipping, again, another term. Okay, so we have terms. Finally, we have non-functional requirements. Those are broken into quality requirements, interface requirements, and constraints. So those are the 3 schools. And under quality, there are 4 things. There's an acronym we use, URPS, URPS. So here we have U and R only. Oh, no, S also. So we're missing P, which is performance. And so we have assets to help you with non-functional requirements as well, interface requirements, and then constraints. Everything has identifiers so that we can reference them from stories if we need to. So if you're like, oh, how do I know that the keyboard rule applies to this story? Just say QU1 and boom, there you go, right? So there you have it. Let me show you a couple other assets that we use to do our solution intent. We have terms and rules. So this is a guide on terms and rules. And you can see here that we have specific rules. Start each term with or the. Here are the only keywords allowed besides the definition itself. Valid range includes, we saw that one when I read out, consists of, conforms to, default, and C. So those are all, we always use these when writing terms. And by the way, we don't just do that in our solution model. Once people learn this technique for term writing, they use it in every asset in the company. It's amazing. And the quality of your definitions goes through the roof. Avoid self-defining definitions. You'll see these everywhere. These are hilarious. You'll see them. A customer invoice. It's customer invoice, and they'll say, I don't see it, but it'll say an invoice for the customer. And you're like, okay, you didn't tell me anything that the term didn't tell me. You'll see that a lot. Underline terms when used. So if you can underline. And then we got some examples there. Document complex business rules. Okay, and then this is the part about the business rules, and it gives you, so you can just pause and look over our guidance for rules. So that's one of the guides we use. And then we have another one for non-functional requirements, which is not here. I'll do a separate video on non-functional requirements because those are quite complicated. Non-functional requirements are a definite advanced experiment. These guys right here. We'll talk a lot about those in a separate video. And then constraints are things that we must conform to when we build a solution. So web, smartphone, non-bot identification, and iPhone access might be 4 constraints that must be implemented when we implement the solution for this particular thing. Cool thing about these non-functionals is they're very reusable. You can literally lift and put them into another system because they're never domain specific. They are quality specific, but not domain specific. So they can be lifted and shifted. And there you have it. That, my friends, is just the behavior model of the solution intent. There's a design model, a test model. We'll cover those elsewhere, and non-functionals will cover elsewhere as well. So that's it. That's the video for today. So I hope that you found it valuable. My name is Anthony Crane with Box Coach, and this has been the solution intent or product modeling.